Good job, Spike. I'm going to show you a bunch of different ways to hang things tonight. I'm going to use some different materials, some of the brackets that I custom make, and then some of the traditional methods and just the way that I do them. This is a shelf that I hung with a French cleat, but I call it a low clearance French cleat. Go ahead. Good boy. I custom make these myself if I have an application where I need to hang something heavy and I can't afford the space that a French cleat would take up. I make them out of these 1/8" strips of steel. And it's basically just 2 stacks, and 1 stack fangs into the other stack. And it's always a little snug, which is good. And there, if I was on a wall and I could trust those screws, you can see how far I can cantilever this out, and it's still very strong. This is a typical French cleat that most of you probably have seen. You have an angle coming up and an angle going down. It's actually the same angle, and it puzzles into one another. So you can have some nice lateral strength hanging a mirror or big picture or whatever it is. It's important though sometimes to put a spacer at the bottom. Sometimes I see French cleats hung and they don't have a spacer at the bottom, or even a second French cleat at the bottom. You know, the more strength, the better. So you can see these applications basically do the same thing, but with this application, with the custom metal bracket that I make, you can get some cantilevered action off the wall. I make these brackets as well. Sometimes a lot of my clients like these big, thick, heavy shells, which kind of is the trend these days. And how do you hang them? It's a real pain in the butt to hang them. So I make these simple brackets. Here I'm using 1/8", but sometimes I like to use 1/4", which is a little bit stronger. It doesn't have as much flex. So 1/8" steel, you can get this from Home Depot or Lowe's. Just drill them, put a countersink in them, and then if you want to put it right into a stud, which is your best bet if you're going to do it in an interior wall application. If you put this in a brick wall, I've seen this carry a lot of weight. But this is a really good solution. And if you have a lot of things on the shelf, these brackets just disappear. Sometimes it works with the industrial look too. A lot of times you see these in the hardware store. They've saved me and Dave quite a bit when you could screw them like this and you have a opportunity to put a screw on the back of a frame or something. You could do the same thing that I just showed you with these brackets that I custom cut, but you could do that as well. And then you do that, put 2 screws into the back of the shelf and then 2 screws into the wall. But of course, this is out of scale. They make these bigger, so make sure your scale is appropriate, your screws are appropriate to the weight, whatever it is you're going to be putting on it. Make sure your fasteners are appropriate to that size and scale. Here's another bracket I like to make. Most of the time when you mount something like this, you have shear force going down like that, but then you also have force like that. So if you can curtail both of them by getting a nice good toggle in there, you're going to be pretty golden with a lot of strength. A lot of times when you're drilling at the sheetrock, you hit insulation on the other side, or if you're close to an exterior wall of like a New York City building, you'll hit brick, which is usually 2 inches on the other side of the sheetrock. So when you go in slow. Don't go in with full force because you'll ruin your bit. You don't know, you could hit a wire, you could hit a pipe. I'll show you how we cut open the sheetrock to check and see if there's any plumbing on the other side. So there we have 2 holes, and those holes seem pretty big, but these brackets are going to cover the hole. So we have a lot of opportunity also. We have a lot of opportunity to make this level. We have a lot of lateral movement, but once we tighten this up, you're not going to get any movement. Toggles work really well, but you just got to be careful you don't over tighten them and break them. So that's really strong. If you can't get into a beam or you can't get into a brick, definitely use a toggle. So that's really strong. If we're on the exterior wall of a New York City building, most often you don't have this much space behind the sheetrock. So what we have to do is, I'll stick a pencil in there till I know how deep it is, and then as long as my toggle has room to open on the other side of the sheetrock, I check and see how deep it is. As long as I know that it can open, I take a pair of bolt cutters and I just cut off the end of the toggle. So whenever I go to the store, I always buy long toggles because I never know where I'm going to be able to need all that length, and then I always just cut them to fit. So there. I always keep a pair of bolt cutters in my kit if I'm going to hang a job like this. pull pressure out. Make sure your toggle is open. Pull pressure. Don't let the gun hammer. You'll break the toggle. So there's our bracket. There's our beautiful piece of hardwood. Rough cut oak. Isn't it beautiful? Leave them long. You can hang your keys on them. Get it right up to the edge there. You have a nice little stylish look. He's like the most mellow cat in the whole world. Watch. He doesn't care about a thing. He's like me. Sometimes I'm installing heavy shelves on drywall in the interior walls of a Manhattan apartment, and I do not want to puncture a plumbing supply line. So occasionally we'll puncture a little hole just to make sure that there is no possibility. I'm going to show you a quick way that we do it and how we patch it quick. I'm not going to fully patch it, but I'm just going to show you. So there, I have a clean hole, and look right on the other side. Look at that. Wouldn't you know it? There's a plumbing pipe right there. And my cat. Where are you, Spike? It's much easier to fix this than it is to possibly puncture that pipe with the tip of a 3-inch screw. That would be catastrophic in a Manhattan building. Well, I want to patch that. I'm just going to show you quickly how I would prepare this to spackle it. Back of the sheet. Actually, this is a trick your dad told me. Use the knife, gives you more grip. Right like that. I'm able to break those short little pieces by using the knife like that. My plug isn't exactly the perfect size, but I would square this all up if it was critical. Then you do like that, and you mud that in. You let it dry, sand it a couple times, and you're good to go. Sometimes when you're hanging something that could be potentially heavy, we have 2 mounting screws here, and we want to put a wire. But let's say if one wire carries 20 pounds, 2 wires would carry twice that, and so on and so on. So sometimes you want to make a cable, and if you have some thin wire, we're going to make a cable for the back of, say, a mirror. You're going to hang a heavy mirror. So now I have 4 strands of wire, kind of twisted together right here at the top by my hand. So now I have 4 strands of wire, a drill, and a screw. And now I have a cable that's 4 times stronger than it was as 1 strand. Depending upon what you're hanging, make sure you have a good connection right here as well. There you go, you got a nice strong cable to hang up your mirror. I'm going to hang this picture. I'm going to show you a method by which I know exactly where I want it. Okay? Once we establish where it's going to go, I'll show you where the hook goes. Is that good?
Higher.
Is that good?
A little higher.
Okay.
To the left. Lower.
More?
Good.
Good. Right there?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So now what I do is I take a pencil and I just literally just stick it into the wall and I just twist it. And that gives me an indication where the top of the picture is going to be. And then I turn it over, if you look at the back of the frame, and then I measure from the top of the frame to the taut wire, and we're at about 2 3/4 of an inch. From my dot, I come down 2 3/4 of an inch, and that's where I put my hook. These hooks, when I'm hanging simple stuff, they work really well and they come right back out, and all they do is leave a little pinhole. Make sure that you put the bottom of the hook on your mark. Not the nail hole, the bottom of the hook. And make sure your wire is actually in the hook and not on the nail. And right there is where you said you want it. It's good?
Is that where I said it should go?
Yes. All right, now I'm going to hang this shelf on the wall. I'm going to use tap cons, and tap cons are great to drill into brick. They come with the drill bit, which is really important because you need to know the right size for the right screw. Take a look at the whole variety. There's a lot to choose from. Alright, we're going to put this in the bathroom. Let's just assume it's level and we know where we want it. I put the drill in and I give it a couple of clicks just to give me some marks on the wall. And now I know where to make my holes. These bricks are hollow, so I was able to go all the way through it. Alright, now I got it lined up. I'm going to use the appropriate Tapcon. Tapcon's a brand. I just happen to like them because they have a lot to choose from, but there's lots of different. One screw so far and it's already in good shape. Got a nice strong shelf up there now. Alright. Show you my hook hooks. Go.
Yeah, the red light is on.
The red light is on. Sometimes when you drill into red brick, you don't always need to hammer. Sometimes you got brick that has like sort of a ceramic coating. Sometimes those bricks are a little harder, but you figure it out. But just typical old red bricks, you could probably drill most often without a hammer. So that drilled real easy, and I have a masonry bit on there, of course, which is hardened steel at the tip, so it can go into the brick. Just a couple of options now. Once you have a good hole in your red brick, you could use this jacket, which you would pound in. I used to use these a lot when I hung signs on the exterior of buildings. You bang that in, and then the bolt makes it tighten in the hole. If you don't have one of these and you're stuck on the job and you need something in a pinch, you could bang a piece of wood in that hole. I sometimes use hard oak or something that's like a strong piece of wood. But when you bang that in there, you saw Spike do this earlier. I bang it in really hard. And what ends up happening too, now I have a spot to put a screw, but it also fills the hole. So when you take the screw out, you don't really have an ugly hole there. This, you could kind of rub in the dirt and then eventually that starts to fade into the texture of the wall. I try to put a hole directly right in the middle of the red brick. I stay away from the mortar. The mortar's usually too soft, and you don't want that anchor to come out over time. Best bet, right in the middle of the brick. Alright, if you're going to drill into a ceramic tile in a bathroom, it's real important you turn the hammer off. You don't want it on the hammer because the hammer will likely break the tile in half. So here you see I just have it on drill. And definitely use some water to keep the bit cold. The bit is very hot. If you keep the bit cold, likely the whole thing will go smoothly. There you go. So if you use the hammer, you'll break the tile. Alright, sometimes you don't have the opportunity to put a nailer where there's a stud. You don't have toggles, or you should use toggles, but you don't have them. You're not hanging a 100-pound mirror, but you're hanging something that's got some weight to it. I developed this method called the Porcupine Method. It's kind of a joke, but it's never failed me. Where you gently screw in all these sheetrock screws at every angle. Yeah, I should be using coarse thread for this. It works much better, of course. But just the concept of all these angles, if you're going to use, say, a French cleat or something, this has a considerable amount of strength other than just putting coarse screws straight in. I should use coarse screws throughout this whole thing instead of those fine threads I just showed you with. But if you do this, you get a lot of strength. And maybe put some panel glue behind it or even just some wood glue. Depends on what the application is. The Porcupine Method. Sometimes you're at a sheetrock wall and you can't find the stud. You've used your device and it's not giving you a clean answer. What I like to do is carry an ice pick for that exact reason. Just wiggle it in. Ooh, I hit the stud on the first shot. Let's just do, if we didn't hit the stud, I hit the other side of the stud. How lucky am I? The stud is exactly that wide. There. And it's nice to keep your ice pick. If you're going to keep an ice pick in your toolkit, keep it nice and polished. I polish it on the buffing wheel. This is not the one I use because it slips right in. And then if you leave a nice little clean hole, it's better than using a screw gun because the screw gun tears open the paper each time. If you're going to stick the screw gun in 15 inches that way and 15 inches that way till you find the stud, it makes a mess. So an ice pick is an easier way to do it. Another way to find the stud is to use a magnet. Sometimes you could see it if you can't see it, or if you think you know where it is, or you see like the little mound of spackle in the paint, just bring your magnet with you and just kind of fiddle around until you find the head of that screw wherever it is underneath the spackle. And then you know you're in line. There's your stud, 16 inches over is your next stud, so on and so on. What's the matter, buddy? Gonna go home? What's up? I'm almost done. Chill out. A lot of times when we hang flat screen TVs, which I don't like to do, but on occasion we do, we find the stud wherever the two studs are. So we've removed all the sheetrock in front of two studs, so we have two nailers. And then we take a clean piece of birch plywood and we replace it. And when I say clean piece, so that we could spackle it in and paint it in. And then we have a perfect nailer for that TV. Those brackets might only work from here and here or here, and you have a nice strong nailer that runs to the two nearest studs. Dave gets these specific pencils from Liverpool Lumber. Is this from Syracuse?
Sure is.
And he thinks that they can specifically detect the sound of the 2x4. You hear the high pitch? The low pitch. Am I on the stud? So, wherever on a job, Dave tries his pencil whispering technique. It works sometimes.